Denny Hamlin speaks to the media about his contract situation with FedEx and Joe Gibbs Racing. And Kevin Harvick says his decision about 2024 will come before Daytona. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off by talking about Pennzoil. As it was announced yesterday that NASCAR and Pennzoil has extended its deal with Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, which includes Cup race entitlement at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Pennzoil has been a major partner with SMI for many years, and glad to say they will continue being a big partner with SMI going into 2023. I think it's a multi-year extension. Glad to say that Pennzoil will continue working with SMI. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Goodyear. As it was announced yesterday that Goodyear is extending its official tire deal with NASCAR. They've had a tire deal since 1997. They also will continue sponsoring the May Darlington Spring Race as well, which is a Goodyear 400, which is also expected to be the throwback race once again in 2023. Glad to see NASCAR will continue working with Goodyear. I know there's been a lot of tires with issues this year, but Hoosier has not been really able to do anything about it, and honestly, I think it's good to see that Goodyear will continue being the partner. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but that's my opinion. I think we have to keep Goodyear around, at least for the long-term future. No other tire companies, I think, will be ready to go. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about S.J. Ludica. As it was announced from multiple reports from Marshall Pert and Adam Stern, the IndyCar has parted ways with its marketing chief, S.J. Ludica, and is increasing calls from the series paddock to shake up its marketing efforts. IndyCar needs to figure out how they're going to be marketing stuff, and I think one of the issues is about IndyCar is they don't do a really good job marketing the series as much, which has basically stagnated the growth of IndyCar. So I think it really is a good decision that they are going to basically trying to force them to change up the marketing efforts, to get someone younger in there to basically try to fix these problems, because IndyCar needs to find a way to grow again, and in my opinion, I hope they can be able to find a way to grow the series once again in the future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Barstool Racing. As it was announced, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday evening, that Barstool is going to be returning to NASCAR in 2023. A big reason why they're returning is Alex Bennett. Alex Bennett is a partner, I think, of that group, of the Barstool group, and she has become a massive fan of NASCAR really ever since the Ross Chastain move, and she's been talking nonstop about NASCAR. So I'm glad to see that Barstool is going to be returning to NASCAR races in 2023, and I think it's phenomenal news. I'm glad to see that they are returning. I know some people disagree because of their controversies, but I will say I'm definitely for sure really excited and really pumped to see that they will be returning in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're going to talk about the Most Popular Driver Award. Now, of course, every year, there's always a Most Popular Driver Award. And the winners of these Most Popular Driver Awards for Cup Xfinity trucks are no surprise. So, no shock here. Chase Elliott actually ended up winning the Cup Series Award once again. I think that's the 5th or 6th year in a row that Chase Elliott has won the Most Popular Award. For the Xfinity Series, this one's also not a big surprise. Noah Gragson won that award. Noah Gragson, how popular he is, not a major shock. And for the Truck Series, no surprise here. Hailie Deegan ended up winning the Truck Series Most Popular Driver Award. Congratulations to the three on winning the Most Popular Driver Award. I'm very excited for them, and congratulations to them on winning the Most Popular Driver Award. Pretty exciting news to share. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Scott Dixon and Jack Aitken. As it was announced yesterday that both Scott Dixon and Jack Aitken are going to be driving the Cadillac LMDH at the 2023 Rolex 24. Really exciting news to hear. Scott Dixon, I think, is a very talented driver, one of the best drivers in IndyCar history, and he's also won some Rolex 24s as well as some other big events. May see that he'll be running with the Cadillac group. And Jack Aitken, a very talented driver over in the Formula One era over there. I don't think he's racing Formula One yet, but he's been kind of rumored eventually, maybe at one point in the next couple of years, racing Formula One. But it's amazing to see that both these drivers will be racing in the 2023 Rolex 24. Very exciting news for sure, and glad to see that both of them will be driving in the 2023 Rolex 24. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Sage Carrot. As Sage Carrot has a big announcement coming likely later today. Now, what is this announcement to be? Well, by the time you're probably watching this video, it's already probably been announced at this point, but it's expected that Sage Karam will be driving for Alpha Prime Racing next year. Now, how many races he's going to run in 2023 is to be determined. When it does get officially announced, I'll probably talk about it later next week. I'll probably talk about what my thoughts are on it. But I'm really excited for Sage Karam regardless. So I think Sage is a very, very talented driver, and I think he definitely 100% deserves this opportunity to have a shot at driving for Alpha Prime Racing. He's put up some good numbers throughout the years, and it's phenomenal to see that he's talking about running with Alpha. So congratulations to him on the opportunity, and excited to see what he'll do at Alpha Prime Racing in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about reverse DRS. Now, it was reported, I think, by Autosport.com that there's apparently conversations about potentially reverse DRS. Now, Ross Braun was speaking to them, and he says that 2026 F1 aeroplanes could lead to less runaway victories, meaning more gimmicks in Formula 1. Now, I get that Formula 1 is trying to be more entertaining because they want to stay around long term. But they're creating too many gimmicks. And they are going to hurt the fan base growth, and they're going to hurt the series. If they take away these runaway victories, they're going to hurt the series long term. F1 is basically the pinnacle of motorsports. Even though I don't think it's always produced the greatest racing, it is still the pinnacle of motorsports. And I just question what the hell they're trying to do here at this point. They can't continue having gimmicks like this. They really, really can't. If they're going to keep the growth that they've been having, they cannot continue to basically try to go ahead and continue these gimmicks. I think it's foolish, I think it's stupid, and I think it's a bad call for them to continue doing this, in my opinion. I don't understand what the heck they're trying to do here. I get they want to basically have better racing and closer racing, but you're going to have trains and stuff, and you're basically going to have issues where it's going to be hard to pass unless they can find a way to make it more easier to pass, because it can be difficult to pass. But you can't just basically create closer racing to try to make the product better. You got to make the product better, and you're going to have runaway victories. That's how Formula 1 works, and I'm really frustrated that this is what they're trying to think about doing, because I think it's completely stupid and unnecessary, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some spotter news, as there were a couple spotters that were officially announced for 2023. So Derek Nealon, shockingly, will not be moving over with Tyler Reddick at 2311 Racing and will be working with Kyle Busch in 2023. Nick Payne, he's working with Tanner Gray in the Campbell Truck Series at DJR Racing. He'll be working with Tyler Reddick in the Cup Series next year in the number 45. And Tony Hirschman is actually going to be spotting for Ty Gibbs in 2023 and now following Kyle Busch. Definitely some very interesting moves for sure in regards to the spotter moves. I think Derek Nealon is going to be a really good addition to working with Kyle Busch. I think he's a really awesome spotter. He worked with Kyle Larson for years and also worked with Tyler Reddick for years. You know that he's going to be a good person to work with. Nick Payne's done solid with Tanner Gray, so I think he'll do good with Reddick, and I think Tony Hirschman will be a great addition to working with Ty Gibbs. Congratulations to those spotters on working with their drivers in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Alex Palou. As it was announced yesterday that Alex Palou has been officially named the reserve driver at McLaren for 2023. This has been expected. It's been really reported since it begun, and I think since the day they announced that he would be returning to Chip Ganassi Racing, that he was likely going to be the reserve driver at McLaren. This is going to be a really good opportunity for Alex Palou, especially when there are races that he is scheduled to basically not race at, because he's, of course, running full-time with Ganassi in 2023, but he will be running with McLaren in 2024. I think this is a really good opportunity for Alex Palou to get some experience. He'll probably be doing some FP1 practice session again like he did in 2022 and a couple races he did do practice, and I think it's a really good opportunity. He'll be basically the reserve driver at McLaren. We know how good of a talent Alex Palou is. He's got ambitions to go to Formula 1, and I think it definitely is really exciting news to hear that he's got some ambitions to go to Formula 1, and I think it's definitely very, very interesting to see for sure. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jamie Chadwick. As it was officially announced yesterday that she will be driving for Andretti Autosport in Indy NXT, which is Indy Lights, in 2023. Jamie Chadwick was coming off of basically winning the W Series Championship, in fact, a three-time W Series Championship at only the age of 24 years old. She is an extremely talented driver who's put a lot of work in over the years and deserves this opportunity. And I think that she will be a legitimate championship contender in Indy NXT next year. I think she's going to be really fun to watch. I don't talk much about Indy NXT and drivers going to Indy NXT. There's so many drivers that haven't announced for Indy NXT. You've got Jagger Jones going in there next year. Ernie Francis Jr. is jumping up there. You've also got some really good drivers. I think Christian Rasmussen is going to be in there next year. And there's just a lot of talent going in there next year in Indy NXT. And I think it's phenomenal news for sure in regards to that. And I'm excited to see that she'll be in Indy NXT next year. I think she'll be a championship threat with the Andretti Autosport Group. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Speed Sport. As it was reported by Jenna Fryer yesterday that Speed Sport will be launching a motorsports television channel in 2023. The plan is for them to broadcast 400 hours of live events and thousands of hours of motorsports events as well on that channel, and will be available, I think, on Pluto TV and a bunch of other different channels as well. And here's the big thing. It's also, I believe, going to be ad-free. This is amazing news to hear that Speed Sport is doing this. It's good that they're trying to dedicate themselves to having their own. There's also rumors that ARCA could also be going to Speed Sport in 2023, which I think would make a lot of sense. 100%, I think it would make a lot of sense for them to bring ARCA over there to have a free channel for people to have an opportunity to enjoy that. So I think this is phenomenal news. I know NASCAR has been talking about a streaming service. I wonder if this is going to be the streaming service that they've been talking about for a really, really long time. That being said, though, I think it's great news for sure, and happy to see that Speed Sport will have a channel dedicated to that heading into 2023. I think that's definitely really phenomenal and really exciting news for sure. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, we do have a couple stories regarding Joey Logano, and the first one is talking about Kurt Busch. Now, last night at the awards ceremony, Joey Logano says he forgot to acknowledge Kurt Busch, and he said the sport should have absolutely done that. I 100% agree with Joey Logano on this. We should have acknowledged Kurt Busch and all the contributions that he's been able to do with the sport. And there's a lot of times where we forget to talk about all the legends who put the work in over the years and talk about that. And I think he's absolutely right 100%. The fact that they didn't mention about it last night, even though I didn't watch the award ceremony because the award ceremony isn't getting televised till tomorrow night, which didn't make any sense. They should have televised it live. But anyways, I think it's very important that we could have acknowledged all of Kurt Busch's contributions. The good news is that Kurt Busch is going to be racing in 2023 if he gets medically cleared to race, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But I think he's 100% right. We should have acknowledged everything that Kurt Busch has been able to do for NASCAR and for the sport and all the contributions that he has been able to do. So it's a little disappointing they were not able to talk about that, and just a little disappointing for sure that not anybody talked about it. I think it's really disappointing everything that, that they've been able to accomplish and Kurt Busch has accomplished, and it's all for nothing because some of these people will not talk about it. I just think it's really, really frustrating and really stupid that they weren't able to talk about it. But that is just my honest opinion on that. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ty Gibbs. Now, Ty Gibbs was at the media center yesterday speaking to the media and basically says he was not going to be speaking about his father during the media sessions. Obviously, I think everyone knows what happened to Coy Gibbs. Very, very sad and very tragic situation. You could hear in his voice when he was being interviewed that he was not trying to get shaken up and get really, really emotional. And I could not imagine being in the position of a driver, especially as young as Ty Gibbs is, being in that situation. So I feel terrible I still, even to this day, am praying for the Gibbs family. Just a really, really terrible situation all around. I know we all have our criticisms of Ty Gibbs, but at the end of the day, he's just a young driver who's got a lot of talent, who I think will win cup races and cup championships. I don't know if he'll do it in 2023, but I think that he will definitely win races next year. And it's just been heartbreaking to see everything that really happened to Ty Gibbs, especially at a young age when you're in that position. I could not imagine being in that position. And the media did a really good job backing off on it as well yesterday, which I really appreciate that for Ty. And they did a good job in GJD media on that. I think that's really good that they kind of backed off on that, because you don't want to put the drivers in a position where they want to talk about that kind of stuff. So I'm happy the media didn't push him over in that situation. It's really good to hear. year, and I'm glad to see Ty Gibbs out and about and enjoying the championship, was able to enjoy the championship and be there with his family. So, and by the way, Joe Gibbs did mention it. He thanks everyone for the support, and I really do feel for Ty losing, lost his father. Just a really sad situation and a really sad and tragic situation. So, hopefully things definitely can get better for Ty, and hopefully things will get better for Ty here in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Nashville Fairgrounds. Now, Bob Parker spoke to Mayor John Cooper of Nashville, and he also says that Jerry Cobble says if deal gets approved by the end of June of this upcoming year, there is a possibility that they could have all the renovations for the fairgrounds completed by 2025 to host NASCAR Cup Series and National Series events. Obviously, you've been following the story around the Nashville Fairgrounds. You know at this particular point that there's been a lot of conversation about the Nashville Fairgrounds potentially trying to get back into NASCAR and the Cup Series returning there as well. I believe the last time the Cup Series raced at the Nashville Fairgrounds was in the mid-1980s. And a big reason why they're pushing to get the Nashville Fairgrounds back, there's a couple reasons. One, more short tracks. NASCAR's trying to get more short tracks on the schedule. Two, they are wanting to get more of old types of racetracks. North Wilkesboro is obviously going to be coming back in this year for the All-Star race. Rockham's in the question. There's a lot of talk that that track could obviously return in 2023, like in the next couple years, maybe by 2024. It's very possible that could return. And you've got talks about the Nashville Fairgrounds. The third reason, it's in the city. NASCAR is trying to integrate more to the city. There's always also talk there might be a race in the Strip of Las Vegas as well, and other races in different cities like Mexico City and Denver as well. They're trying to bring the product of the city in closer to the fans as well, which I think absolutely makes a lot of sense that they're trying to do that. Again, we still have to have we basically still have to have it approved by the board at this point, but I really hope they can find a way to get it approved so we can have racing at the fairgrounds in the not-so-distant future, and I do hope we can get approval done here really, really soon, because I think it will definitely be phenomenal when it does get officially approved. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kurt Busch. Now, Denny Hamlin, we have a couple things around Denny Hamlin to discuss. And one of the main things I want to talk about is he spoke on Kurt Busch. Now, Denny Hamlin spoke about Kurt Busch, and he says that if Kurt Busch is medically cleared to race, which he still has not been medically cleared to race, but if he is medically cleared to race, he will race in a couple select races in 2023. Obviously, Kurt Busch will not be racing full-time in the Cup Series 2023, as he announced that at Las Vegas about a month and a half ago that he would not be racing in 2023 in the Cup Series on a full-time basis due to his injuries that he has suffered. Obviously, Tyler Reddick will be driving that 45 car next year. But I think that Kurt Busch, if he gets cleared, he could run at Darlington, maybe run the Southern 500, maybe he runs a throwback race at Darlington, and maybe he runs a couple other races like at Watkins and tries to win at a few races. And maybe, just maybe, if he gets medically cleared early, he could run the Daytona 500. That could be a possible option, and maybe he drives the number 97. We'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to Kurt Busch, but we'll see if he gets to race next year. But I think, trust me, I think that Kurt Busch will get medically cleared to race in 2023, and I think he'll definitely have a really good chance at racing next year if he's medically cleared, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, we obviously know that Joey Logano has a long-term contract with Team Penske, as we discussed yesterday on the channel in the Silly Season Update. Roger confirmed on stage how long Joey Logano's extension is with Team Penske, and it's a 5-year extension. This means that Joey Logano will be at Team Penske, I believe, at least through 2028 because Joey Logano had a contract through 2023. This means Logano will be there from 2024 to 2028. By that point, Joey Logano is going to, I believe, by the end of 2028, will be 38 years old. So he's going to finish his career with Team Penske. And I think if Logano continues to win championships like he's done the last couple of years, I think that Joey Logano is going to be with them for the rest of his career. Obviously, he's been one of the most successful drivers at Team Penske. He's not even reached the prime of his career at this point. And yet, you look at everything Joey Logano's been able to accomplish. He's been able to win a lot of races, like over 30 career, almost 30 races with Team Penske, including exhibition races. And he's been able to accomplish a lot in his young career because even though Joey Logano's been in the Cup Series for nearly 15 years now, he's only 32 years old. So he's still a younger driver, despite being in the Cup Series as long as he has been. So it's really exciting to see that that it's a 5-year deal. I think it's going to be really fun to watch and see what happens over the next 5 years, too, the next 6 years. I think he's going to win like 20 or 30, maybe wins or 20, 30 races during that time. And I can see him getting around 50 to 60 wins in his career and maybe getting closer to Dale Earnhardt and surpassing him on the wins column. That being said, though, I'm glad to see that it is a 5-year deal for Joey Logano here at Team Penske. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch spoke to the media this past weekend about the transition with Richard Childress Racing. And he was very, very excited about moving over to Richard Childress Racing next year. He says the environment's a little bit different than when he worked at Joe Gibbs Racing, but he's still trying to get affiliated with the culture as well. Kyle Busch is also expected to run, I believe, this weekend at Circuit Americas in the number 3 XRL car. There's like Team America or something along those lines where he'll be racing number 3 Richard Childress Racing car. Richard Childress Racing drivers have done this in the past where they race at Circuit Americas on the first weekend of December. You've got a lot of racing going on this weekend. Obviously, you've got the Gateway Dirt Nationals, the Snowball Derby, and you've got this event going on as well. And I think it's really, really exciting to see that, Kyle Busch is probably excited to work at Richard Childress Racing. They're still working on future stuff, and obviously sponsorship and funding is basically a thing they're still currently working on at the moment. But it's official. There's photos starting to come out of Kyle Busch driving the 8 car. He's really excited for the transition, it sounds like. And I'm really excited to see Kyle Busch driving the 8 car next year at Richard Childress Racing. I think I've become more of a Rowdy fan every single year, and I think him driving Richard Childress Racing is going to be really, really fun, and I think he'll be a legitimate championship contender. I know it sounds crazy for a guy jumping over the 8 car for Richard Childress Racing when they haven't really been a championship caliber team, but I really think that Kyle Busch is going to do phenomenal at Richard Childress Racing next year, and I think it's going to be phenomenal to watch. So really excited to see for sure, and I cannot wait to see how Kyle Busch is going to do at Richard Childress Racing in 2023. Really exciting news for sure to see about that kind of stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Denny Hamlin once again. As Denny Hamlin spoke to the media about the championship format and talked about the sample size of the championship format when it comes to that. He spoke out basically had the best average finish, like a 6th place average finish, and wasn't able to have a chance at getting a championship. He feels like with the championship format, it should not be a one-race format for the championship race. He thinks it should be multiple races and should have a different sample size where it's multiple different races across. I 100% agree with Denny Hamlin on this. I think the fact that it's a one-race championship is really, really frustrating because one race, a lot of things can happen that can affect. One race should not determine the champion. It should be multiple races. I think there should be multiple races where drivers should be able to go. I think it should be 2 or 3 race sample size because you have a couple race sample size, you're going to have an opportunity to really showcase these guys and the opportunity for them to come back. I think it should be multiple different races. You can still have the 4 drivers competing for it, but I think it should be 2 or 3 races. Another thing is I think the playoffs should be shortened just a little bit. I think there should only be 12 drivers competing in the playoffs and not 16 drivers. I think the fact that nearly half the competitive cars can make the field and make the championship just devalues the championship. I think a one-race championship devalues the championship, and I think that there should be multiple races in there and not a single race championship because there's too many outside factors that play a factor into that, and I think that it should be multiple different races, and I agree with Denny Hamlin 100% that it should be multiple different races and not just one race to determine the champion. It's just personally my opinion, but I think it shouldn't just be one race. I think it should definitely be multiple races to determine it. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Colby Howard. As Colby Howard spoke to TobyChristie.com this past week, and he says that he will not return to McAnally-Hilgeman Racing in 2023. Now, he did basically tell him that he does already have a full-time truck lined up for 2023, but will not return to the 91 truck in 2023. This is very, very shocking. Colby Howard had some pretty good runs last year with McAnally-Hilgeman Racing, but there's also a lot of bad luck that was associated with Colby Howard in 2023. And he had a lot of bad luck. There's no doubt about that in 2023. Now, a couple big questions. One, who's going to drive the 91 truck next year? I think McAnally will still be a 2-truck team. I would think that they'll have a driver in there for the first 2 races, and then Jake Garcia, who drove the 35 truck for McAnally-Hilgeman, I would think that Jake is going to drive a majority of the races in the 91 truck. I think Jake is a very talented driver, had some pretty good runs in the 35 truck, which really didn't have a lot of funding in that truck. It wasn't the most focused on truck. I think he'll be in the number 91 truck for majority of the year next year, and he'll probably maybe get some Cup guys or some Xfinity guys to drive that truck for a few races next year. The other question is, where's Colby Howard going to drive? I have a theory, maybe a Tory Racing. But Tory Racing, they have, of course, we know Chase Purdy's going to be a KBM on a full-time basis next year. So that right, one of the Tory trucks is available. I think Tyler Ankrum will be back with them. But I would think it's very possible that Colby will drive maybe next year for Tory Racing. I think Colby's a very talented driver, and I think he would 100% deserve the opportunity to drive with them. I really hope he gets the opportunity to find a ride. It's disappointing he will not be with McAnally Hilgeman next year, but I think it's good to see that he's in conversations to drive for an organization. Glad to see at least he'll be full-time in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ross Chastain. Now, it was reported by Hailie Deegan yesterday that Ross Chastain was speaking to the media about the Rolex 24. He says he would absolutely love the chance to compete in the Rolex 24, but not sure who would have the opportunity for him. Sounds like he's very available at the moment. This is very, very shocking news because I didn't know Ross Chastain would love to do a lot of this other road course racing types of racing, but I think it shows that Ross Chastain is open to it. And let's be fair, Ross Chastain is a very, very good road course racer. He won his first career Cup Series race at Circuit Americas, which of course is a road course. And I think it shows that he's a very versatile driver who wants to go and race in a Rolex 24. Now, obviously, I don't know if he will run in the Rolex 24. We don't know how many Cup guys want to run in it. There could be some Cup guys that run in 2023, but again, we don't know who all is going to run. Maybe runs for a mid-pack organization, maybe runs for the second group, maybe runs for the GT group. I think it'd be fun for him, though, to run for the overall win. In fact, I think a lot of drivers should be going for the overall win if they're going to compete in the Rolex 24. There's a lot of big names that are entered in this year's Rolex 24. And I just think this would be fun for him to have an opportunity to be in a really, really competitive team to run in that event. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but it's signing that Ross Chastain is interested in running in the Rolex 24, and it's definitely phenomenal news for sure that he's interested in running in the Rolex 24 in 2023. And maybe running in the future. Who knows at this point. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Live Fast Motorsports. As it was officially announced yesterday that Live Fast Motorsports is going to switch to Chevrolet in 2023. And they'll have E-Star engines with their team in 2023, and the plan is for them to have multiple drivers in 2023, including having BJ McLeod drive a lot of their races in 2023. There's been rumors and rumors for a while that this was going to happen for the last few months. It's been rumored really for the last month or so, really since the beginning of the offseason, really since nearly the end of the Cup season this year, but they were talking about making this move for 2023. And I think that this actually is a really good move for Live Fast Motorsports. Chevys seem to be a lot faster than the Fords, and I think this could help Live Fast Motorsports. But we'll have to wait and see because Live Fast Motorsports has been one of the slower teams. Now, do I think it will help? Who knows at this point? I hope it can help Live Fast Motorsports because I think, trust me, they need to get as much help as they can to be a more competitive team. But it shows that they're trying to, basically, it shows that there's more Chevy organizations, and I think that's a good thing. Because the more power to Chevy, the better it's going to be for the Chevy group. They've got a lot of talent going over there next year. Kyle Busch is joining up next year. And obviously, I think that Live Fast Motorsports is really kind of setting themselves up for a really good future heading into 2023. So, exciting news for sure around Live Fast Motorsports. They'll be switching to Chevy next year. I know that they were looking to be better with Ford, but it's really good to see that they'll be switching to Chevy, and hopefully this will help them be a more competitive team in 2023. But again, we'll have to wait and see what happens on how they're going to perform in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Roger Crew. As it is expected and reported by JosephSwrigley.com and TobyChristie.com that Roger Crew will be driving for GMS Racing in 2023, driving the number 24 truck. Now, the official announcement will not be until this upcoming Tuesday, December 6th, but it's that he'll drive the number 24 truck. Now, I've known about this move really for a while, and honestly, I'm so pumped and so excited that Raja is going to get this opportunity to drive the number 24 truck. Raja, in my opinion, is an extremely talented driver. This year, he drove select starts for Inspired Motorsports, and most of the starts, even though he got crashed out in a couple of those, he was running really good. And nearly got a top 10 in one of his races at Gateway earlier this year in that number 7 truck. Had a really strong run. I think it was his debut, if I'm not mistaken, and he ended up finishing in 11th position, which is really, really impressive. He also drove for Alpha Prime Racing on a part-time basis, and he did a really awesome job in 2022 this year. And I think with him transitioning over to GMS, he will be a legitimate championship threat. He will be teammates with Daniel Dye, who drive the 43 truck, and also be teammates with Grant Enfinger. And having Grant Enfinger has a lot of that truck series experience, I really think that will play a major factor in helping out Roger going into next year with GMS. So I think this is an exciting move. I think he will win a race or two next year. I know it sounds crazy to say, but I really think that Roger is going to win some races next year in that number 24 truck. He's done really, really good when he's driven for other organizations and has gotten the best out of the equipment he can. He almost won in ARCA. He was a championship contender there in ARCA. I think he finished 3rd or 4th in the ARCA championship. And I think he is going to be a driver that's going to do phenomenally well with the GMS group. When this does get officially announced next Tuesday, we'll talk about more about that, my thoughts on it. But it's really exciting to see that he's in conversations to go ahead and drive with GMS Racing in 2023. That'll be really exciting news and really fun news to hear that he's in conversations to do that in 2023. Excited to see he'll be with GMS next year in 2023. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott and Ross Chastain. Now, the media finally, after multiple weeks of waiting to talk about this, the media spoke to Chase Elliott about the block that he made on Ross Chastain and getting wrecked. On one of the late race restarts, I think around 95 laps to go in this race, if you watched the Cup Series Championship race at Phoenix, you saw that Chase Elliott, who was probably the best driver who could have probably at the point beat Logano, he got turned by Ross Chastain. But what needs to be understood is that he ended up blocking Ross Chastain. Now, Chase Elliott basically says he doesn't even really think about that, and doesn't even really think about that even 4 weeks down the road. I think what this shows is that Chase Elliott knows he's probably at fault for what happened on the track. Look, I get that people are going to blame Ross Chastain for the wreck, right? It happens. People are going to blame Ross Chastain for a lot of things because Ross Chastain is a very aggressive driver. But in that situation, you can't really blame Ross Chastain because Ross Chastain, he's not going to give up. He's not going to lift, especially when he's trying to win his first championship. He's not going to lift, especially in those restarts. And Chase Elliott should know that. Ross could probably have given up. There's a long way to go. No doubt about that. But he's not going to give up the position. He's not going to give up the track position. He's going to try to get as many positions as possible, especially when Joe Logano, who as dominant was, he won the championship. He's going to want to go ahead and push as hard as he can to go out there and win. So I can't blame him for not basically backing off. And Chastain's not going to back off in those situations. And Chase Elliott should realize that he was clearly at fault for that wreck, in my opinion. I think he made a mistake, and I think Chase really knows that he made a mistake in that situation. And I think it's just phenomenal to see that people are blaming Chase Elliott, blaming Ross Chastain, but I think Chase Elliott's clearly at fault. Came down on the racetrack, and I think it is 100% Chase Elliott's fault. Ross could have backed off, sure, but when you're going for a championship especially, you can't basically back off. You got to try to win these championships. Look, I was mad when Carl Eggers got turned by Joey Logano at 2016 Homestead, but that was on Carl. I'm sorry. Even as a Carl Eggers fan, I can admit that that was on Carl Eggers now to this day. At first, I thought it was Logano's fault, but that was on Carl's fault because Logano was not going to lift. He was younger, and Chastain's in that same position as well where he's not going to lift in those situations. So, in my opinion, I still think that it's Chase Elliott's fault for the wreck, and I don't think you're going to see anything else come out this, especially next year. I know a lot of people are asking, why did the media ask? Well, obviously they're going to ask about it because it's been a few weeks, and they definitely want to talk about that for the headlines. So definitely interesting for sure, and I think that 100% that was on Chase Elliott in that wreck, but that is just my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Bowman. Now, Alex Bowman was being asked by the media, including Bob Pockus yesterday, about the number 48. And he basically laughed and asked, when asked about the 48 card, and he says the 48 will be his number in 2023. Now, the reason that this has been brought up is because Jimmie Johnson is returning in 2023 on a part-time basis. And there was a joke that came around basically saying that Jimmie Johnson was going to pry the 48 away from Alex Bowman and the Hendrick Motorsports group. Well, Alex Bowman, he laughed about that, and I thought it was really, really funny. He laughed about it. But he also confirms that he'll be in the 48 next year in 2023. Again, I did not expect the 48 number to be changed for Alex Bowman. I thought that he was going to keep the 48 car, and Hendrick basically kept that number around forever, Hendrick Motorsports. Granted, I know it's Jimmie Johnson's number, and Jimmy's ran the number at Action Express Racing with the Hendrick car, and we also basically did go ahead and see him drive that 48 in IndyCar. But the 48 is a big number with the Hendrick Motorsports group, and they're not going to get rid of that 48 car. I think it's such an iconic brand. Ally obviously would want to keep the 48 car as well, because Ally also has that car when Jimmy drove it with the Action Express Racing Group in 2023. That 22, I should say, sorry. That being said, though, I will say it's very interesting that a lot of this conversation come around, but Alex Bowman basically confirmed that he'll be driving the 48 car next year, and good to see the 48 will stay with the group. Now, next year is going to be a contract year for Alex Bowman. He'll have to step up and improve. He's got Blake Harris coming over there next year, and hopefully we'll see Alex Bowman perform in 2023, and hope he can step up. I think he'll miss the playoffs, unfortunately, but I think Alex Bowman will do really good. I think it's great to see that he will continue driving the 48 number in 2023. Now we'll go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Indy 500. Now, Roger Penske was speaking to the media yesterday, and he says that there could be an Indy Charlotte double done really, really soon. He doesn't really think that it's possible. It could probably be done in 2023, except if Jimmie Johnson decides to do it. But he mentions a few drivers who could run the Indy double for 2023. Now, who are these drivers that are talking about maybe doing the Indy double in the future? The first one is Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch, the driver, has shown a lot of interest in running the Indy 500 and was actually really close to running the Indy 500 in 2023. And if he was able to run it, he would have ran the double. Unfortunately, there were a couple of outside factors that really came into play. He had sponsorship to run with Menards, but, of course, McLaren wanted to run their own colors, the orange plaid colors they've ran on their cars over the last few years. They wanted to run those colors on that car. So that's a big reason that did not happen. And Roger basically reiterated, well, not Roger, but the team basically reiterated they didn't want to have another car available basically for Kyle Busch or other Cup Series guys to run. So Kyle Busch wasn't able to run this year. But I think there's a good chance in 2023 that we could see them go ahead and run Kyle Busch in Indy 500, maybe a Team Penske. This could come to play maybe in 2024. That could become a major possibility in 2024. Another driver I think that's going to run the double some point is Kyle Larson. There's actually a chance maybe he still could run it this year, but right now I think there's only one ride that is available for Kyle Larson, and that would be the second dry Reinbold Racing entry. And Osaki still could run it because Don Cusick's got a big affiliation with the Track Attack program, Hendrick's Track Attack program, so that could be a possibility there. But I think that there won't be, I don't know, we'll have to see about that. I don't know if he will get an opportunity to run that car this year, because that's really the last ride that is available that is a competitive car, because Indy 500 rides are drying up as we speak, and there's a limit on how many cars these guys are going to be allowed to run. But I think Larson eventually will run. He's got Hendricks Plus to run it, so that could be a possibility. What about other drivers? What about Chase Elliott? Chase Elliott would be a great option. I think it'd be fun for him to come and run the Indy 500, and I think it'd be fascinating to see him run in a competitive Indy car. That would be really, really fun and really interesting. But also then, of course, Jimmie Johnson. Now, Roger did, like I said, mention that Jimmy could be a possible option for 2023. He could go to Ganassi, but there's a lot of talk that Ryan Hunter-Reay might end up at Ganassi in 2023 for the Indy 500. We'll have to wait and see, though, on that front, because Ryan Hunter-Reay's been working with Chip Ganassi Racing's IMSA program, and also working with them as a management up over there. But I will say this. I do hope we can see a lot of NASCAR IndyCar doubles again. I haven't seen a lot of those recently. The most recent one was Kurt Busch in 2014, and Kurt Busch was almost very close to being extremely successful. So I really hope there's a chance we do get to see an Indy NASCAR double where they see the Indy Charlotte double, and I do hope that this opportunity does come into play in the not-so-distant future. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but hopefully in the future, we will see a couple guys get an opportunity to maybe run the Indy NASCAR double here. It's maybe next year, but I don't think it's going to happen next year, so maybe we'll see it happen in 2024. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, Denny Hamlin was speaking to the media yesterday about his contract talks, and he reiterates that he plans to continue racing for Joe Gibbs Racing. His deal and FedEx are up after 2023. Hamlin said he is involved in some reorganization plans for Joe Gibbs Racing on the competition side. He said his 2311 ownership duties don't impact any eventual decision to retire from driving. Obviously, if you've been really paying attention, it was reported about a week or two ago by Austin Konetsky from Sportsnet and Adam Stern, as well as on Sirius and NASCAR Radio, that Denny Hamlin is under a contract year with Joe Gibbs Racing. And FedEx is also under a contract year as well. The last time to re-up was early in 2021, so it was a 2-year extension on that front. Now, I remember last year when we all thought that Kyle Busch was going to come back, but M&M's announced in December that they were not going to be returning. I have a feeling that this might end up being different, though, and I have a feeling that there's a good chance they will get a re-signing done. Denny Hamlin's been at Joe Gibbs Racing now for about 20 years. He's been with the Joe Gibbs Racing Group really since 2004, nearly 20 years from Xfinity and the Cup Series as well. Has been driving the Cup Series for Joe Gibbs Racing since 2005. So is there a possibility that Denny Hamlin could leave Joe Gibbs Racing? It is very possible, and goes and drives for his own team. It is very possible. But I think that Denny Hamlin is going to want to get a deal done with Joe Gibbs Racing as soon as possible. And if they can find a way to get FedEx to re-up, which I think is possible, they do end up re-upping. I think that there's a good chance that that could end up getting done. And I think there's a really good chance and possibility that we're going to see a deal get done here in the not-so-distant future, because I think that Joe Gibbs really wants to keep Denny Hamlin. And I think he's playing a really integral part in trying to help the team rebuild this up. Because let's be real, Joe Gibbs Racing, if they lose Denny Hamlin, they're going to be in a really, really big trouble position. Because Denny Hamlin has played a major factor in helping Joe Gibbs Racing be extremely successful. But because there's also talk Mark Jr. may retire at the end of 2023. That's possible. And you've got two younger drivers in there. Granted, Christopher Bell, he's about 27 or 28. He'll be 30 in the next year or two. He turns 28 here in the next couple days. And then obviously you look at the age of Ty Gibbs. Ty Gibbs is only going to be 20 next year, and only 21 by the end of 2023. And if they lose Denny Hamlin or even Mark Jr., both those guys next year, they're going to have a really young team. So Joe Gibbs is going to do whatever he takes. He's got to do whatever he takes to try to keep Denny Hamlin around. He cannot make the same mistakes twice that he made with Kyle Busch, because I think that if they lose Denny Hamlin, we're going to be in a tough position. But I think they're going to be able to get stuff done. But then again, I thought we wouldn't have the situation come up with M&M's, and I think that's why this is being talked about so much, is because it is kind of concerning to hear that this basically is a situation going on. I think the fact that if we lose Denny Hamlin, that's the problem. I think that's why we're seeing this whole situation with the RTA coming into play as well, because the teams want more money. And basically, Denny Hamlin talked about that a little bit more and basically said that they're just wanting more rate, basically a little bit more income in. That's the reason they're talking about doing these exhibition races. They're not doing this against NASCAR. They just want more money in the deal, which makes a lot of sense. You want to get as much money as possible and as much money as you can. But I think with the situation with Hamlin, I think that he will return to Joe Gibbs Racing next year. I think he will drive the 11 car on a full-time basis in 2023, because if they lose Denny Hamlin, they're going to be in a really bad, in a really tough, and a really awful position. So I think that they will be able to find a way to get Denny Hamlin re-signed with the team, and I think he'll finish his career with Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, how do I think the deal will be with Denny Hamlin? I think it'll be a 2 or 3 year deal, because I think Denny Hamlin will retire in the next 2 or 3 years by the time he's around 45, 46 years old, because by that point, Denny Hamlin nearly had 20 full-time Cup Series seasons. But I think the 2025 will probably be his last year in Cup. Maybe in the last year he decides to run with his own team 2311 for a few races. Who knows at this point, but trust me, I think they'll be able to find something for Denny Hamlin. I wouldn't worry too much yet if you're a Denny Hamlin fan, because I do think they'll get a contract done with Denny Hamlin, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to the Denny Hamlin sweepstakes, where he's going to end up driving in 2024, but I think that he will get a deal done for 2024 and the next couple seasons. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next major story in today's episode, as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, Hailie Deegan put out a post congratulating and thanking her fans for all the support for her winning the most popular driver award. And she adds in that tweet that she basically has some news to share really, really soon in regards to 2023. Obviously, Hailie Deegan will not be driving next year for Tricon Garage as DJR Racing is switching to Toyota and will be transitioned to Tricon Garage. Now, Hailie Deegan is a Ford driver, so she'll have to be with a Ford organization next year in 2023. So the big question is, what teams could she drive for in 2023? Well, I think there's a few options available. I think the Stewart-Haas Racing possibly is basically gone. The only way I would see her driving for Stewart-Haas Racing if they decide to expand to a 3-car organization, but I don't see them doing that. But if they did, that would be huge for her because I think that would be the best opportunity for her going into 2023. But I don't see that being a possibility. Maybe she drives for SS Greenlight Racing in 2023. SS Greenlight Racing, she drove for them in her NASCAR Xfinity Series debut, and she ended up finishing 13th. But that was, of course, with Stewart-Haas Racing. Now, is SS Greenlight going to be affiliated with her? Because I know they've been affiliated with Rick Rowe Racing. I don't know. Maybe they've stopped their affiliation with Rick Rowe Racing. So it could be possible that she could work in SS Greenlight Racing. What about Ryan Sieg's RSS Racing Organization? That's a decent team. They've got an SHR Alliance. What about RSS Racing? That could be an option. And then, of course, Beach Bacab Motorsports would be the other option in the Xfinity Series if they do decide to run a Ford car. The only other team that I could see her driving for next year is in the Truck Series, and that would be with Front Row Motorsports. Now, Front Row Motorsports have been some conversations. They could expand to 2 trucks in 2023, and it sounds like this could be a possibility for where she could end up going in 2023. It'd be a very competitive team. That would be a really competitive truck for her because Zane Smith is coming off of winning the Truck Series Championship in 2022, and I think he'll be a championship threat once again in 2023. And I think she'd be more competitive if she drove there. But I want to say this around Hailie Deegan. I think Hailie Deegan needs to be moving up to Xfinity on a full-time basis next year. And I know some of you are going to disagree with me because you look at her statistics. Her stats have not been that impressive in the races that she has ran. I mean, Hailie Deegan has only had 3 top 10s in her whole entire Truck Series career, which isn't impressive. But some drivers' racing styles are better in other series than others. Look at Harrison Burton, for example. Harrison Burton, he struggled with Kyle Busch Motorsports and struggled to win in the Truck Series. He goes to the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and in the first series up there, he wins 4 races and almost has a chance at the championship, though he gets eliminated in the round of 12. Look at Noah Gragson. Noah Gragson only got a few wins in the Truck Series, goes to Xfinity, starts winning a lot of races after being in there a couple of years. He goes on to win a race in 2022 and is now racing a Cup on a full-time basis in 2023 with Petty GMS Motorsports. I think that there are drivers that have done better than others. Also, Ty Gibbs didn't even run trucks, and now he's going to be in Cup next year. Look at other drivers like Jimmy Johnson and Kevin Harvick. They've been able to succeed in different series. Some drivers have better driving styles than others. I'm not comparing Hailie Deegan to those drivers, but it's possible she could be like a Harrison Burton, where she doesn't do as good in trucks, but drives better in Xfinity. If I'm in a position to try to go ahead and basically have a position for her, I think she needs to be in Xfinity next year. So I hope she's in Xfinity. I predict, though, that she'll either be a Front Row Motorsports in the Truck Series or she'll be with SS Greenlight Racing in the Xfinity Series. I think those are the rides that she has for next year. But she could have potentially Stewart-Haas Racing. It is a very big possibility if they do decide to have 3 cars. But I think that she should be next year drive full-time in the Xfinity Series. She deserves the opportunity to drive there, and I think she needs to be driving in that series. Some of you are going to disagree with me on that, and that's fine because of her truck stats, and I understand that 100%, and I get your reasoning behind that, but I think that Hailie Deegan needs to be driving full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year in a really good organization. I think the best option would be Stewart-Haas Racing, but I think she deserves to be racing Xfinity on a full-time basis because she did have an impressive race with SS Greenlight Racing where she finished 13th and kept it off the wall, and I think she'll learn a lot better racing Xfinity because she's going to do better running in Xfinity, running 15th, than running 20th or 25th in the Truck Series where she's getting involved in a lot of wrecks that are really out of her career control. So I really hope that she's in Xfinity, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode is we're talking about Kevin Harvick. There's been a lot of talk around Kevin Harvick over the last couple weeks about his future past 2023. Now, Kevin Harvick was asked by the media this past weekend about 2024, which is actually yesterday about 2024, and Kevin Harvick basically responded to questions about 2024. He says he still has not 100% made his mind up if he's going to retire in 2023 or not, and his decision about 2024 is going to be made by Daytona weekend, which is not too far away. That's about 70, 80 days away. He says his decision should be made by Daytona because he wants to make sure he has all his plans set by that particular point for 2024. Now, the reason we're talking about this is because it's been rumored for the last few months that Kevin Harvick could potentially retire at the end of the 2023 season. But now it sounds like it's a little bit more undecided if Kevin Harvick is going to be returning in 2024. Now, it's a little bit undecided. Now, I think that Kevin Harvick is likely going to retire in 2023, at the end of 2023, and I'll explain why. Kevin Harvick, at the end of 2023, he is going to be 48 years of age. He is a much older driver. He's, in fact, the oldest full-time NASCAR Cup Series driver. And he's been in the Cup Series now for about 22 seasons and will be in his 23rd full-time season in 2023. And by the end of 2023, he is going to be 48 years old. He turns 47 in about a week from now. So I think that Kevin Harvick is going to retire at the end of the 2023 season. Now, if you look at all the accomplishments that Kevin Harvick's been able to do, he has been made a lot of accomplishments. He's won a Cup Series championship, won Daytona 500, won 3 Brickyard 400s, 2003, 2019, and 2020. He also won like 3 or 4 Coca-Cola 600s. He's won the Southern 500. And he's won a lot. He's won the Southern 500 twice. He's won a lot of big events in his career. And he's got 60 career NASCAR Cup Series victories, including 2 from this past year in 2022, where he had 60 wins. And he's one of only 10 drivers, I think, that's been able to accomplish that feat, getting 60 wins in their Cup Series career. And there's not a lot of drivers who are not even close to that, except Denny Hamlin, unless Denny Hamlin, though, can win like 5 or 6 races a year. I don't see Denny Hamlin reaching that 60-win goal. That being said, though, around Kevin Harvick, could he return in 2024? Yeah, it's very, very possible. And I know that Gene is really trying to convince Kevin Harvick to come back in 2024. And I think a big reason why they're trying to convince Kevin Harvick to come back in 2024 is because of the fact that Kevin Harvick, they don't have a lot of young drivers available. Their forward development program right now is in a really, really troublesome position. Because you look at the drivers they have. They just got Ryan Preece over there, which I think Ryan Preece, if Kevin Harvick does retire in 2023, I do think that Ryan Preece will probably be the driver taking over for him and moving from the 41 car over to the 4 car. And then I would think Cole Custer would go to the 41 car. But then you also got to think about Aric Almirola as well, because Aric Almirola, there's a lot of talk he also could retire at the end of 2023 as well. But when I look at this move for Kevin Harvick, what I think is going to happen for Kevin Harvick, I think that Kevin Harvick likely does retire in 2023. But we're just going to have to wait and see. There's a lot of unknowns at this point and a lot of uncertainty around Kevin Harvick going past this season. I just think with 2023 coming around the corner, I think he also, though, will make decisions. Because Kevin Harvick, also think about this, he's got a son that's also racing as well. And I would think that Kevin Harvick would want to be with this family a little bit more consistently as well. But also talking about Kevin Harvick, I think there is a possibility that Kevin Harvick, when he does retire in 2023, which I still think is going to happen, I think that he will go to the Fox Sports booth. I know there's a lot of talk and conversation about 2024 because, of course, 2024 is going to be the last year with the current TV deal, and they're going to try to move Kevin Harvick to the Fox Sports booth as well for 2024. Again, there's just a lot of uncertainty around Kevin Harvick right now in his future past 2023 because Kevin Harvick, like I mentioned, will be 48 at the end of the 2023 season. So he's probably going to wonder. I would not be surprised if he does end up retiring at the end of 2023. I think that next year, I really do believe that 2023 is going to be Kevin Harvick's final year in the NASCAR Cup Series. I really think it will be his last season, and I think he will retire at the conclusion of 2023. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards to Kevin Harvick. Like I mentioned, though, I think that Ryan Preece takes over the 4 car, and then I think that we will see another driver get in the 41 car, that being Cole Custer, gets back to the Cup Series. I think Cole Custer will be a legit championship contender in Xfinity and probably actually wins the championship. I think he's my championship pick currently in Xfinity. I think he wins a lot of races and will be the favorite to win the championship in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. But I think 2023 is going to be the last year for Kevin Harvick, and I really think I think next year is going to be the last year for Harvick. I just think at this point he will retire from the Cup Series, and next year will be the last year for Kevin Harvick. So that is for today's long NASCAR and motorsports video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as support me on Patreon as well. Let's go jump over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think Kevin Harvick retires at the end of 2023 or returns in 2024? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Hailie Deegan and what team do you think she'll drive for in 2023? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow on my channel, I'm not sure what's going to be coming out. It's either going to be a team preview or top 10 most anticipated race of 2023. That's one of the videos coming. And then I should be having the 2023 Cup Series predictions video dropping on the channel here in the next couple days. So anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.